Hello pre-service teachers. In this instructional video, I'm going to teach you how to analyze primary sources. And I'm also going to show you two different strategies you can use in your future classrooms in order to do so. The Social Studies TEKS expect students to analyze primary sources beginning in second grade. One of the sources listed includes photographs. But before you can have students analyze primary sources, you want to check and make sure they understand what a primary source is. And they definitely need to know the difference between a primary source and a secondary source. The next activity that I'm going to show you comes from Teachers Pay Teachers from the Literacy for Kids store. You can access this activity in the Week 10 folder or pay to have a license for yourself. The task cards from Literacy for Kids have a great definition of primary and secondary sources. It says a primary source is a first-hand account by someone who experienced and or participated in the events or conditions being studied. That last line is very, very important. It has to fit the context being studied. In contrast, a secondary source is a second-hand account created by someone who did not experience firsthand or participate in the events or conditions being studied. So let's look at some samples and see if we can figure out if they are primary or secondary sources. Number 1, a memoir is a collection of short stories written by the author. So this would qualify as a primary source. A biography, on the other hand, is not written by somebody that the source is about. So for instance, if I had a biography on Robin Williams, it would not be written by Robin Williams himself. So it is not a first-hand account of his life. It is a secondary source. An unaltered photograph is likely a primary source. An autobiography is also going to be a primary source because the text is about the person who is actually writing it. Now, a letter could be either a primary source or a secondary source. It all depends on the context. If I am a historian in the year 2030 who is studying the COVID-19 outbreak, and I read a letter written by a second grader to his grandmother, and it was written in March of 2020, that would qualify as a primary source. But if I am a historian in the year 2030 who is studying the COVID-19 outbreak, and I read a letter written by somebody born in the year 2021, that would be a secondary source because the person born in 2021 was not able to experience the COVID-19 outbreak firsthand. A modern-day analysis of a Pioneer Woman's Journal. Now you know that the Pioneer Woman's Journal would be a primary source, but the analysis would be a secondary source. A map created during the time period studied would be a primary source. A map created after the time period studied, like I was a historian who wanted to draw a map about the route Paul Revere took, that would be a secondary source. A speech could be a primary source as long as it was created by someone who experienced the event you were studying, or for instance, if you were studying Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement, his I Have a Dream speech would be a primary source. Once you've taught a lesson on what a primary source is and the difference between primary and secondary sources, you can then move into your analysis lesson of a primary source. The first strategy I'm going to show you is called the photo circle activity. Any grade level, including kindergarten, can do this. The literacy skill is specific to social studies because you're teaching them to analyze a photograph. You want to pair this with another content TEK, such as holidays and celebrations, so you can apply the skill. The original photo circle activity that I created comes in a packet that I sell on Teachers Pay Teachers, but you'll see how I've modified this assignment so that students like yourselves can do it digitally from home. So let's look at what the packet says. It says learning to analyze historical artifacts requires a special set of literacy skills. Young historians can begin to develop those skills by circling elements of a photo that tell the reader what the photo is about. While circling is seemingly an easy task, the young historian must make a series of connections for a deep analysis to happen. These connections include tying together events throughout history, cultural concepts, geography, and personal experiences. The older the student is, the deeper level of connections they're going to be able to make. If you add in sentence stems and handwriting lines, students can work on writing at the same time. Here's a clip of Tiago doing this activity with me this morning. Okay, Tiago, we're going to do a photo circle activity today, and we're going to start by analyzing the photo. Okay? So the first thing that I want you to do is just circle what is the first item that you notice in the photo. Okay, why did you pick that?
Because it's like they're setting up a parade or something.
Okay, they're setting up a parade or something. What else do you notice in the photo?
There's logs to logs.
Okay, are they logs? Look really closely at them.
They look like logs.
They look like logs. Do they say anything on them?
No.
You can't see them very well. Okay, what if I told you that they're tombstones? Do you know what a tombstone is?
It's like a grave.
Okay. What else do you notice about the photo?
There's military people setting it up.
There's military people setting up the flags?
Yep.
Okay. When do you think this photo might have been taken? Okay, he said 2018, but you don't have to guess a year.
I just want to, okay?
I know, but you can say, do you know for sure that it was 2018?
No.
Okay. What about...
So it's a guess, though.
It is a guess, but let's use the photo for evidence. What time of year do you think it was taken?
Oh, no, in my lifetime.
Maybe in your lifetime? What makes you say that? Okay, what about what season do you think it was taken in?
Spring.
Okay, what makes you say that?
Because there's trees growing.
Okay, so there's trees growing, there's green grass, there's leaves on the trees, so it could be spring or it could be...
Summer.
Summer. Okay, so let's type that down here. Okay, can you click on that so I can type it, please? It says, when was this photo taken?
Nowhere.
Where do you think this photo was taken?
At a cemetery.
Okay, at a cemetery. What makes you say that?
Because of the tombs.
Okay. Okay. When was the photo taken? Stop.
In my lifetime.
Okay, you think it could have been in your lifetime, and when else did you say? What season?
Oh, spring.
Okay. Who is in the photo?
Military people.
Okay. Okay, so if I told you this was a holiday, what holiday would you think this was?
Nationals Day.
Nationals Day?
No. Oh, no.
Do you know a holiday where military people, what do we call people who have served in the military before?
Veterans.
Okay, so, and they're putting flags on the tombs of soldiers. What holiday do you think this is?
Veterans Day.
Okay, so what would you say the photo is about?
Serving the people who fought in the wars and who died. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Tiago. So that's a sample of what it's like to do a photo circle activity with a second grader. And you'll notice that I had to do a lot of scaffolding, but I did that through questions, trying to make connections to what he already knows. The older the student gets, the less scaffolding that you have to do after the first time that you... The next analysis activity I want to show you is called the 4 C's activity. It's designed for upper elementary and then on into high school. You also need to pair this with any other social studies content TEK, and you can choose any primary source, whether it be digital or concrete, for them to work through. You can do this on a field trip visit as well. There is a sample lesson for this 4 C's activity inside the Week 10 folder. This is your model lesson for analyzing primary sources. Okay, so typically we do this activity in a museum or with a a primary source we can actually hold and touch in our hands. But we can't do that today due to the COVID-19 outbreak. So we're going to take advantage of all those museums and places that are putting virtual tours online. And I've never been to the Great Wall of China, so I selected the Great Wall of China from that list, and I'm going to take a virtual tour of it as I fill out my 4Cs chart. Okay, so as I take my virtual tour, I'm going to walk my way through the 4Cs chart. To save us some time, I've already completed it, and I'll read you what I put in each of the areas. So the first C is concentration, and it's much like the photo analysis where you look at the different parts of the primary source and you kind of record what it is your brain is seeing. I talked about how the wall climbs through the terrain, it's built right in, it's made out of stone that is mortared together, it has windows for viewing, you can see long distances, etc., etc. I don't have a lot of personal connections, which go in the second C box, but I do know that it's in the movie like Mulan, as well as some other action flicks. I've had friends that have been to it and they say the walking is like super intense, and I know that it is one of the few man-made structures you can see from space. For context, you're supposed to think about the artifact in the past, and so I put it back in the time that it was built. I know that it was built to serve as a protective border to the Chinese who were being invaded over and over again. I know that it was somewhat effective, especially for people coming in, like the Huns, I think it was, on horseback, because the horses couldn't scale the wall. But I know that it didn't do a lot for large-scale invasions because the people could climb over it and such. It did, however, provide a very important place for lookouts as well as communicating, because they could run up and down the wall and talk to people on the watchtower. I also know that it still stands today and is a super popular tourist destination. So in the fourth box, in conclusions, you're going to take the other 3Cs and you're going to put them all together. And you're going to come up with something that sounds a little more nuanced. So the first three are kind of like note taking. The fourth one is like, now make your analysis pretty. So I said, the Great Wall of China was one of the most innovative creations by the Chinese. It spans for miles and miles as it winds its way over the mountains, serving as an outlook post for soldiers and tourists alike. Although it was effective at preventing small-scale invasions, it was ineffective at keeping the enemies out long term. Today, the Great Wall of China is one of the hottest tourist spots in the world. So I'd like for you, if you are going to do the 4Cs one, if you do wind up doing this 4Cs activity, I'd like for you to take a screenshot. If you're on a Mac, it's Shift Command F4. If you're on a PC, it's print screen. I'm just going to select this, and then I'm going to drop my photo in here. Your individual assignment that correlates with this video is to choose one of the primary analysis activities for week 10. If you choose the photo circle activity, the template that I modeled in this video with Tiago contains the photos for you or for you and your child to do together. If you choose the 4Cs activity, the template is blank and you get to choose your own primary source to attach. Since we're confined to our homes, this would be a great time to take a virtual tour of a museum. You have a group assignment that is very small but important to getting prepared for the lesson plans we're going to write next week. You want to go back to that social studies book hunt template that we filled out in week 9 of class. Do not create a new file. You're going to use the same file that you used before, but this time, remember where you left that primary source line blank? You're going to go find one primary source that could correlate with the book that you chose. So you have 3 of the books that I had chosen for you, and then you had 3 that you self-selected. You're going to have a total of 6 primary sources. Since this is a group assignment, just split those up between you. If you need help locating primary sources, just go to the instructions on the Week 10 folder, and I've made a bulleted list of different websites that already have primary sources for you. And then here's where I found the museums offering those virtual tours. There's this Smithsonian Natural History Museum, and then there's also in the Good Housekeeping article, it has several other ones. So before next Monday, I want you to submit your kindness rack mapping activity, your primary source analysis, just one of them, you don't have to do both, and then your primary sources book hunt. Remember that all of those are model lessons for the lesson plan you're going to be writing next week.